This is Penn State tight end Tyler Warren.
I'm not sure if I can remember an offense who wanted to scheme up touches more for their damn tight end. And I understand why. He was clearly Penn State's best player on offense last year. 31 screens. You would see these leak outs. You would see these rub routes, wildcat carries. They would get him in these little trips formations, run these quick little slants. 63% of his receptions came within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage. And when he has the ball in his hands, we're talking about 6'5", 256 pounds, and he doesn't want to run around you. He doesn't even want to run right by you. He wants to run right through you. Like one of the most unique styled players in the draft, no question about it.
You mentioned it. He was Penn State's offense this season, and I will reiterate, entire offense. 104 catches, which the next closest pass catcher on the team had 46, and then that went for over 1,200 yards and 8 touchdowns. Oh, and by the way, he was also their wildcat short yardage player as well, with 26 carries for 218 yards and 4 scores. Again, built the entire ship around what is Tyler Warren, and it took the Taysom Hill, Sean Payton love fest to like another level. He's an absolute bull, as you said, with the ball in his hands. He wants to run over square defenders. Multiple times he dragged defenders for 3 or 4 extra yards. But I will say, for Daniel Jeremiah, who is as in tune as anyone else, mentioning that this is a consensus top 10 prospect in this entire draft class, he's not as crystal clean of like a pure tight end, I think, that and we'll get to a whole bunch of those points.
Yeah, he using that frame that he's talking about, it's not just yards after the catch being a bull. There are some high point catch moments out there. I mean, go ask my USC Trojans about that. But there's a couple.
He passed the USC Trojans test, by the way, for like 17 catches and over 200 yards.
Is that a good thing? Like Tyjae Spears, Dalton Kincaid. I'm just like starting to run through this list. But anyway,
well, everyone over the last 4 years has their best performance against the USC Trojans. I've come to notice.
Right, definitely so. And yeah, he absolutely annihilated us. So. With Warren, though, I agree that he's being billed as this Rob Gronkowski clone, this George Kittle clone. He's more of a move tight end than like some inline crazy monster, even though he has the size of those guys. They would move him around the formation and they would get him in the manufactured touch department in ways that like Gronk not necessarily would. And I think that as a route runner, if you're just really trying to isolate when he's just like facing man coverage and they're not doing these rub routes and stuff, he's pretty mediocre as a route runner. Now, that said, he's got a great push off and he's so damn big and yards after the catch wise, he makes up for it. But this wasn't like as easy as like 104 receptions are just coming and like all of a sudden like, this is like one of the most pristine route runners in the class. Is a little bit of a unique situation where like I understand why they were like manufacturing all these touches for him and he's still like a decent route runner. But like to me, compared to like Loveland or like a top 10 overall pick like with Brock Bowers last year, I did think there's a little bit of a difference from him.
So I'm not going to use mediocre when it comes to the skill position stuff that Tyler Warren does, but I do think maybe this conversation has to be extrapolated into like a tight end discussion as a whole, because it's a different position than any other out there. Most importantly, so often it takes about like 3 to 4 years for these guys to like really get their feet under them once they reach the NFL, because at times you have to be a 6th offensive lineman. Other times you have to be the slot wide receiver and you have to live in the trash of where the defense is, where all the players are. You have to have, to me, like a true physical edge to you. And Tyler Warren definitely has that lunch pail mentality on the field. You're going to have tight window targets, a nasty mentality, and you can't really be a finesse player. So like just to bring, you mentioned Brock Bowers, I'll bring in another first round pick, and not to pick on, the Buffalo Bills here, but to me, this is why like Dalton Kincaid hasn't fully panned out, is because as an isolated tight end, to me, just watching the Bills, they prefer Dawson Knox as a run blocker and like this inline presence. And then when they want to have a slot pass catcher or slot wide receiver, Khalil Shakir is just flat out better. So like this 11.5 personnel stuff, it only works if you can really be as good of an inline blocker and then also a really achievable, advanceable slot pass catcher on top of it. I do think that with how also it's not just like pure inline wide tight end stuff that the NFL is doing now. There's a whole bunch of split flow action. There's a whole bunch of get up your tight ends on the move and working across the formation to unblock defenders. That's not just, hey, we're going to face him up and line him up and block this defensive end. Yeah. And so I do think he's going to be a real highlight reel player, but I don't think he's like this polished product that he might be viewed as at this moment.
Yeah, I was watching the blocking snaps and, like, people comparing him to Gronkowski and Kittle, like, I just don't see it, and I think, like, one of the reasons why he doesn't fully get there is because he has, like, these shorter arms, which is, like, really fluky, like, they're under 32 inches long, and, like, we talk about this with offensive linemen all the time because, like, you literally need to, use your arms to get these guys off your chest. Now, he's not a bad inline blocker at all, he can play wide tight end. I just think that he's more, like, closer to, like, the Mark Andrews, Trey McBride type of guys who you are constantly getting these guys on the move. They're not always just down blocking against defensive ends. They can do it here and there, but you like these guys with paired with another tight end, which is no problem at all for Tyler Warren, and he's going to be able to stay out there way more than the Dalton Kincaid guy, like tier of tight ends, just because he is so damn physical. So I really did enjoy him, and I think that my favorite part of his game are some of those high point catches. Like this guy, like is gonna be a threat in the red zone. He actually even had a couple like big crossing routes where he did create some separation long term as well. I don't think that he's super fast. I think he's more than fast enough. I don't think that he's super agile. He's just agile enough. But really, like his whole game is like being this physical weapon and somebody that has like a great feel for the game in zone coverage, but also just like wanting to take your head off. And at a certain point, like that relentlessness becomes such a trait that you can't ignore it. And I think that's the tier that Tyler Warren ended up getting to.
Yeah, I do want to talk about his receiving skills for a moment because, like, to me, his best inline tight end reps as a pass catcher were against Illinois. This might have been back in 2023. He got that inside leverage, a head nod at the top of his route, then breaks it inside for a gain of 11. Did the same thing versus Maryland on a 14-yard catch against zone and kind of like these split linebackers and split safety against Michigan State. He definitely did, to me, slow his route down with the pacing to take advantage of that middle of the field space. And then again, just to revert back to this, if you're a tight end, rarely, and I mean rarely, are these guys burning down the field past NFL linebackers, defensive backs, especially. More so, you're going to live in this 5 to 15 yard range. And because of that, again, working over the middle of the field and then outside breaking routes, it's just going to be tons of tight window targets. There was a second and 8 versus Maryland on a corner route where, again, it was, I believe, in the red zone. An awesome, awesome catch with players draped all around him. He embraces that. He embraces that chaos of the physicality of the game. And then you also need to possess the hammer mentality. And Ohio State, he did that too. Now, I will say Ohio State definitely was like, hey, we're not going to let you get all these like free releases. And they tried to like smash him in the mouth and match his physicality. And so that was a really fun matchup to it. I just don't know if there's like a one-to-one comparison for what we just saw with him at Penn State.
Mhm.
And I do think to get the most out of him, an NFL team is going to have to create like a section of their playbook where the primary read or the primary ball carrier is going to be Tyler Warren. And I'm not to say that's a bad thing. That's just an uncommon thing for
Yep.
this position.
Yeah, I completely agree. And then he's going to have to be competing with NFL guys that are also worth getting manufactured touches too. And I think that's going to be the hard part is how much of these plays that we're talking about that worked for Penn State out of necessity aren't necessarily going to be there just because you have a elite wide receiver, an elite running back to also get that too. Some of the comps, just like throwing these guys out there. I think Mark Andrews is like my favorite Tyler Warren comp. Taysom Hill is like getting all the gadget stuff. But I think kind of in between all that stuff is like David Njoku is like frequently used in the screen game with the Browns. And that's like one kind of avenue. Jonnu Smith is like a miniature version of what they're doing. Like there's only a couple tight ends that kind of get these looks that Tyler Warren gets. So I see it the same way that like I really want to see what offensive coordinator he's going to go to because I would get a little bit fearful that like too many of these plays that we're talking about get completely removed of the offense, and then he has to like be like this like actual man beating route runner, intermediate and stuff, which I saw in glimpses, but just didn't see it at the same level to another guy that we're going to talk to in Colson Loveland.
To me, his best man-to-man route running was against Purdue. Like there was legit route running stuff. I thought in that game. The issue with the screen stuff, and he did get 31 of those this year, is that to me he doesn't really have a giddy up. Like there's no
Yeah.
instant juice necessarily to his game. It's more of I'm a build-up speed player, and once I am, again, I'm going to be a bulldozer and try to run over you. There was one against again Purdue that he got for 48 yards that he did a good job in that. But I don't know. I do see him as like an inline player in 2025, maybe more so than you do. Like he is going to be a team's primary tight end once
Oh
he
yeah.
reaches the NFL. You can't say that about all these other types, but his game is just like flat out very different than someone like Brock Bowers,
Yeah.
in my opinion.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, the run blocking stuff, he's definitely willing to do it, but there's just no technique to his game.
Yeah.
Like a West Virginia safety threw him down 5 yards down the field. He gets really like top heavy as a blocker. Like these can still be successful, but he also ends up on the ground with a lot of them, like
Mhm.
lacks balance with that stuff. But like the want to is there, the tenacity is there. It's just like the technique is lacking. But again, that's why he might not be one of these instant contributors unless he does go to like a really good play caller. And if that's the case, I do see how there becomes more refinement to his game, and he does become a more polished player in
Yeah.
year 3 and year 4 of his rookie contract.
Yeah, he's really inexperienced. Like last year was like his full season of being
Right.
a starter. He was only a part-time player behind a bunch of other NFL tight ends at Penn State. That's usually what happens there. But I saw the same thing. Like he just fell off some blocks, and I wonder if that's a balance issue. Which I didn't see like a bunch of balance in his game. Yards after the catch wise is usually just like running right over you and kind of falling like over you, which is better than most tight ends. But you're not seeing like some like super nimble guy out in space, and I think that kind of did translate in the ground game. So he's to me he's just not a top 10 overall prospect. I have him as my tight end 2 in this class. In my top 100 players, he's currently sitting at 20th overall, which to a lot of people is insulting. So it's kind of like splitting the gaps of like somebody where I get really nervous that the manufacturer touches are going to disappear from. But also, I did see enough glimpses where I think that he is going to be a number 2 or number 3 target in your offense. He could play a bunch of snaps. I'm not worried about him coming off the field because of his size. But I just do not see the Gronk, the George Kittle, like those guys were just like complete animals. And I think that you're kind of setting up Tyler Warren up for failure if those are going to be your comps.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of would call him an animal with his mentality at 6'5" and a half, 256 pounds, but he just doesn't have the same athleticism to me that George Kittle does. I don't want to go in this entire long conversation, but athleticism in my brain is like really important when it comes to tight end position. If you just look back at, either 1,000-yard receivers, which that list is very small at the tight end position, and we can just take Pro Bowlers, even though that voting is totally broken. You know, 75-80% of them are top end athletes. And then, you know, it's just something to me that at this spot, tight end is like an athletic spot, an athletic position. It's ingrained in the greats at the position. Yeah, I don't know if I'm as nervous about like the arm length and wingspan stuff as you, because there's a bunch of, starter caliber players with that. Like Mark Andrews, for example, his wingspan is only a half inch longer. Dogfight is just the word that keeps coming to mind. Like
Yep.
against SMU, which is a much lesser, let's say, recruiting program than Penn State, he just absolutely smoked those guys and was driving them out of bounds 17 yards down the field and all this type of stuff. I just didn't see like the uh, terrifying athleticism and juice. It's more of, oh, this guy might end up being an identity of our offense just because of the will and the fight that he brings to a team, and he plays with that on nearly every single snap.
Yeah, that is for damn sure. I mean, it just at the end of the day, like there's not that many tight ends that have enough firepower to get schemed up the way that Penn State did it. Like you have to be a total freak in order for that to happen. So while it's a little bit of a knock in like how we're translating this, it's also a humongous compliment that they even did that.
Totally. And I would have loved an athletic profile here. And I've also seen people knock him for one singular um, season of production. I'm not saying that you are, just others out there. And to me, like there are only 32 starting tight ends in the NFL, and he had to play and wait behind two of them in Britton Strange and Theo Johnson. And so that's kind of just what Penn State does with all this. I feel like I wasn't as positive about Tyler Warren as I really wanted to be, because these discussions and conversations are
Yeah.
difficult when he's just like apparently a consensus top 10 player across the
Right.
league. So like I really do like him.
Yep.
And
Same.
he is just everything that you want mentality wise of a fighter at this spot. That is just arguably the most difficult position for a rookie to instantly impact. And oftentimes, tight ends that instantly impact are either like true unicorns, or they go to just like great play callers. And I hope he goes to a great play caller. And I will add, like, if he goes to a team with a quarterback that doesn't like to do, short yardage quarterback sneak stuff, he could also end the season with 4 or 5 rushing touchdowns, because that Wildcat quarterback stuff, or even some things under center, was kind of unreal. Like
Yeah.
he made some major plays and was even more difficult to, I thought, tackle there than when he catches passes outside.
Yeah, he was a high school quarterback, so I do think that that could be a little sub package depending on the team. So I hope he goes to. Please just go like if he went to like McDaniel's and with the Dolphins, I think the Cowboys would be a lot of fun. I need a quarterback that wants to get these guys the ball, and I need an offensive coordinator that is willing to do it. Only so many of them out there, but they're in range. So hopefully we see
Yes.
it.
All right. That does it. Be sure to check out the rest of the prospect profiles on the channel. Tons of quarterbacks, wide receivers, running backs. So hit that subscribe button if you're new around here. Leave a thumbs up, and we'll check out the next one.